Today was a massive day for the Republican Party. Never-Trumper Liz Cheney voted out of Republican Party leadership this morning. House Republicans removed Cheney as the conference's chairwoman, number 3 position in the House, with a voice vote behind closed doors. Afterwards, after being removed, Cheney still held her ground.
I will do everything I can to ensure that the former president never again gets anywhere near the Oval Office. We have seen the danger that he continues to provoke with his language. We have seen his lack of commitment and dedication to the Constitution.
Sounds like a line lifted from a pundit at CNN or MSNBC or something like that, something that former President Trump picked up on pretty quick, releasing this statement that reads, "Liz Cheney is a bitter, horrible human being." You knew it was going to be mad. "I watched her yesterday and realized how bad she is for the Republican Party. She has no personality or anything good having to do with politics or our country. She is a talking point for Democrats, whether that means the border, the gas lines, inflation, or destroying our economy. She is a warmonger whose family stupidly pushed us into the never-ending Middle East disaster, draining our wealth and depleting our great military. The worst decision in our country's history. I look forward to soon watching her as a paid contributor on CNN or MSDNC." You knew it was coming. Today, Cheney talked about her principles, saying that Trump was not a conservative.
The nation needs a strong Republican Party. The nation needs a party that is based upon fundamental principles of conservatism. And I am committed and dedicated to ensuring that that's how this party goes forward.
So exactly what are those principles, those conservative principles that she's talking about? Globalism? Offshoring American jobs? An open border bringing cheaper labor to this country? Our military policing the entire world? It is sad to say these were principles of the Republican Party before Trump came to town and changed everything. Republicans were fine with major corporations offshoring jobs, fine with policing the world and drawing out military involvement in wars, and passed on opportunities to secure our southern border even when Democrats wanted to, about 15, 17 years ago. Let's face it, the old Republican Party did a crummy job looking out for its own people, almost as bad as the Democrats were and frankly still are today. Trump's populism focused Republican energy on the people and not the powerful. Liz Cheney is just mad because she and other old guard politicians from both sides of the aisle, to be honest, are watching their dirty little game filled with lobbyists and back scratching and special interests be threatened by a voter base that suddenly demands to actually be represented in Washington. Trump showed Americans that's actually possible, and most of Washington hates him for it and always will. So where does the party go from here? Well, if today's vote is any indication, Trump and more importantly his politics own the Republican Party now. The chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Andy Biggs, tweeting out the GOP is moving forward with an America First agenda. Liz Cheney continually put personal vendettas over the American people and was no longer in step with GOP leadership. I'm glad my colleagues agreed. But as the dust starts to settle, there are still some questions about who's going to replace Liz Cheney in that position. President Trump has endorsed Elise Stefanik, a woman who ironically was less in line with Trump than Cheney herself. We're going to talk about that with Congressman Jim Jordan here in just a couple of minutes. Our White House correspondent, Emerald Robinson, hit House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy today with a pretty tough question. McCarthy's defending of Liz Cheney during the first no confidence vote that she faced just a couple months ago. Take a listen.
About your future in leadership, given you protected Cheney for so long amidst earlier calls to remove her?
Not at all.
You're not concerned at all?
No, I'm looking forward to being Speaker in the next Congress. Thank you all very much.
Tough question for McCarthy. It's also interesting to see who came to the defense of Liz Cheney this time around. Democrats obviously love this woman. They love Liz Cheney. With Republicans like her in power, they have a much better chance of winning, and they know it. Hillary Clinton writing, given a choice between defending American democracy and abandoning all reality and principle for Donald Trump, the GOP has once again chosen Donald Trump. That from the woman who literally claimed the 2016 election was stolen from her. I mean, you wonder how these people write these tweets with a straight face. It's comical. Never-Trump Republican Adam Kinzinger also supporting Liz Cheney.
I just want to say that I'm fully supportive of Liz. What happened today was sad. Liz has committed the only sin of being consistent and telling the truth.
Okay, Adam. It seems like the Adam Kinzingers of the world are looking to leave the GOP, perhaps. This was a headline today. More than 100 Republican former officials to seek reforms or threaten a new party. This effort is being led by Republicans like former Pennsylvania Governor Tom Ridge. The group says they will either reimagine a party dedicated to their founding ideals and try to change it back to what it was, or else hasten the creation of an alternative that'll have basically no support and like 10 people in it. It's a great idea. Remember those ideals, just real quick. Globalism, outsourcing jobs, open border for cheap labor, and military all over the world. That's the old school Republican Party. That's what these people are fighting for. And in the day, back in those days, you remember, Democrats and Republicans weren't that different because everybody was kind of just playing their own game in D.C. and we were the losers. So think about that too. President Trump saying today, RINO losers like Tom Ridge, Christine Todd Whitman, and crazy Barbara Comstock voted for Biden. And now look what they have, a socialist regime with collapsing borders, massive tax and regulation hikes, unrest in the Middle East, and long gas lines. A bit dramatic, but you see what he's saying. Yes, all of those things are happening. We're in a bad position as a country, but at least, hey, there's no tweeting, right? Aren't you so relieved to not have to read those tweets? Liberals think that the American working class will gladly deal with horrible domestic and foreign policy as long as they don't have to read any obnoxious tweets. That's how these people think. And that's why they're destined to lose in the end. While it truly is good news that Trump's brand of politics is winning, the fracture in the Republican Party is not good news. Kevin McCarthy is trying to fix that by focusing on Biden, and thankfully, right now, there's tons to focus on.
But I want to take the opportunity to talk about the concerns I'm hearing around the country. From affordability, the price of gas, the crisis at the border that's coming every single day, the ability to get people to go back to work, the incentive to keep back. Those numbers we heard today on inflation, that should terrify every American.
It should terrify every American. U.S. inflation soaring in April to a 13-year high, that according to the Consumer Price Index. It's like a flashback to the 1970s right now. You have inflation and you have gas shortages. It's kind of bizarre. And then there's the Middle East. We were on a pretty good run until recently, and now Hamas, funded of course by Iran, is lobbing missiles into Israel, and Israel is dropping buildings on the Gaza Strip. It sure feels like old times, doesn't it? Don't you miss these days? Meanwhile, the other border crisis, the other big crisis, is the border. Record crossings here at our own southern border. Hundreds of thousands of Central and South Americans, even some Africans, people from the Middle East, anywhere, marching right through Mexico to come see President Biden after he essentially invited them during the campaign. Biden met today with the Big Four, Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, talking about infrastructure. Republicans want to spend like $600 billion. Biden Democrats want to spend like $2 trillion, trying to find some middle ground. When asked about bipartisanship in this meeting, the president cracked a joke.
When I ran, I said I wasn't going to be a Democratic president. I was going to be a president for all Americans.
How do you expect to do that, sir? How do you expect to
Easy, just snap my fingers, it'll happen.
Make of that comment what you will. Kind of funny.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.